Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Reid, I want to add my voice to what Senator Kane said. Thank you for your commitment during our long break from Washington during this pandemic, for holding regular weekly conference calls, and thank you for putting together this very important hearing. I'll associate myself with Senator Kane's remarks again, a second time, and that I think you make a pretty compelling case. I've read through all these materials that we've had for the hearing, but it's really important that we hear from the unanimous FCC and from Ligado as well for us to make a reasoned conclusion. I'll associate myself with Senator Kane for a third time. He's probably beginning to get anxious about this, about the Attorney General and the Secretary of State. Senator Kramer's asked this. Senator Kane's asked this. Let me just ask Mr. Deasy and Dr. Griffin directly. What do you see that Attorney General Barr and Secretary Pompeo don't see? You oppose this proposal. They support the proposal. So what is it that you see that they don't see?
Sir, as a technologist for almost 40 years now, I see the science, I see the studies, I see the results of what has been done, and the science clearly shows everything we've talked about today in terms of the interference. So that's what I see. I can't speculate on what Secretary Pompeo or Secretary Barr are seeing.
So Senator Kane raised this as well about the testing. I mean, has there been specific, realistic testing done under the conditions proposed by the FCC in last month's order? I've read a lot of the materials here. I've got Secretary Esper's letter here, and there's a lot of conditional verbs in that letter. There's a lot of conditional verbs in the other material I've read here. Things like may jeopardize the effectiveness and reliability of GPS. It has the potential to disrupt commercial GPS receivers. Has there been testing on specific, realistic conditions of the FCC's order that we can say, yes, it will interfere?
There hasn't been any testing since the order was issued 16 days ago. The testing that was done not by the Department of Defense, but by the Department of Transportation, and it is as exquisitely well done as anything that I think I have ever seen. They tested 80 receivers. They tested them against the power levels that Ligado is claiming today to use, and in answer to Senator Kane's question, the power level is the most significant single attribute against which one would test. The DOT tests, as I said in my earlier testimony, were designed to elucidate what was necessary to protect the GPS band. The issue of testing one transmitter against one receiver and substituting one receiver after another in specific scenarios is, frankly, a fool's errand. I can always put together a different geometry, a different scenario, and then ask the question again, would Ligado interfere with that? That is not the way to go about it. The way that the Department of Transportation did in its adjacent band compatibility test is the way to go about it. Those results were unambiguous. They were compelling. At the power levels that Ligado chooses to put forward for its ground-based transmissions, GPS receivers, broadly speaking, will be compromised.
Okay, I have one final set of questions here, and Dr. Griffin, I'll direct these towards you. They're on a related matter. In January, numerous media outlets, to include the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, reported that the Pentagon was going to block a set of rules that would have limited the export of semiconductors, computer chips, and other kinds of advanced microelectronics to Huawei. Is it correct that the Department of Defense initially non-concurred, to use the technical term, with these rule changes?
I don't know if the Department of Defense non-concurred. The Research and Engineering Undersecretariat, my organization, non-concurred. We don't believe that those particular restrictions were going to be beneficial, and that we believe that they would hurt the U.S. semiconductor industry more than they would hurt China. If the goal is to damage China, that's not the tool to use.
But Secretary Esper did not agree with that.
That's
recommendation.
correct.
So this is just another concern that I have, is that the Department of Defense could have an exaggerated sense of scientific and technological certitude that is not appropriately balancing the strategic imperatives or the geopolitical challenges we face. I'm not saying that is the case, but in light of that decision, and in light of the case I see here in front of me, much of which is contingent, I think we at least need to continue to explore that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator